Did you know Super Awesome Mix has an app? Go to the Apple App Store today and download Super Awesome Mix. It's free. You could start creating and sending your own digital mixtapes in just a few clicks. Also, there's links to our Instagram account and a link where you can follow your favorite podcast. Speaking of which, welcome back to another Super Awesome Mix. My name is Matt Sidholm, alongside my co-host and co-founder of Super Awesome Mix, Samer Abusalbi. Samer, how we doing today?
I'm doing well. I feel like I want to ask you how you're doing, especially after listening to this mix. Like, are you still okay? Because I realized this is maybe a little bit of a downer mix. We're talking about Death Cab for Cutie here on all 12 songs. So, I just want to check in. How are you?
I really tried to pull the positives out of a lot of these songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're doing an intro to Death Cab for Cutie. Samer is gonna take the lead on this, so I'll be introducing every track. And they're a band that I've always known of, and I remember years and years ago when CDs were a thing. My brother had burned me one of their early CDs. I forget which album it was, and so I remember listening to them, and I was like, "Yeah, these guys are pretty good." But exactly to your point, I was like, "Yeah, it's a little bit of a downer." And I think I was on a road trip, and I was like, I'm going to veer off the road at any moment here, so I'm going to maybe switch it up a little bit.
Right.
but I think you did a good job putting together this mix and, doing a deeper dive into them, because admittedly I'm not as familiar with their music. It was pretty interesting to see kind of their evolution and to really read into the lyrics, because I haven't spent as much time with those. So I think I'm doing okay, but there's definitely a couple notes in here where I'm like, is everyone okay? As I'm listening to the song, that's kind of the first thought that comes to my mind.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of fields on this mix. So, get like a nice little cup of tea or coffee and get into a little cozy couch or room or whatever, dim the lights. Just lean into the fields for these next 12 songs. There are plenty.
Lean
but
into
then
the
have
fields.
then have some silly movie on to play right afterwards, to bring you back up, like Airplane or something classic like that.
Or just turn to Comedy Central and knock out 2 or 3 episodes of The Office, because it's all a song. Right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's get into the feels. Track 1, it is Transatlanticism.
Yeah, so this is actually off of the album of the same name, Transatlanticism, which is their 4th studio album, which I was really surprised by, because I think this is the one where they kind of commercially broke out. They started being featured in a lot of TV shows and movies, and their songs got a lot more radio play. Originally, Death Cab for Cutie was supposed to just be a solo act by Ben Gibbard, and then he started to kind of piece together a band, and they had a number of albums, like I mentioned, that didn't really do a whole lot, but then this one arrived and everyone knew them, and that's when I got introduced to them. And I've been listening to them ever since, which I guess now at this point, because this album came out in 2003, it's been 20 years since this album came out. So that is incredible. Because in my mind, it feels like they, just came out like a week ago, but nonetheless.
It's all new.
It's all new, yeah. But yeah, I fell in love with the softness of his voice. I really love the lyrics. You mentioned going through the lyrics this time. I think that's a key part of this band's experience, is really understanding what they're singing about and and often lamenting about. But this song, is one that I definitely have a lot of memories of playing. And I believe I was in high school / college, as kind of, senior year and then starting college. And so there definitely were a lot of feels then, you're kind of peak hormonal at that point. And it's a major transition in your life, as you go from high school to college, if you go that route. And so yeah, lots of nights listening to this in my car, driving around with just really leaning into it. And I love the lines here. This is one of my favorite songs off this album, where you just keep singing, "I need you so much closer," because this is really just about a person being distanced away from someone that they care about and that they love. And so I think, again, in the context of going from high school to college, like you lose a lot of friends, to distance. And so you think about, you kind of think about them and wish that maybe some of them were close again and that you could do all the simple things that you were doing together. So I think that's another reason, maybe subconsciously at the time, I was really into this music. But I just think it's a beautiful song, and it kind of sets the stage for what's to come in the rest of this mix.
I really appreciated the songwriting in this one because he uses the Atlantic Ocean kind of symbolically as just sort of a symbol of distance. The Atlantic Ocean kind of came up out of nowhere, like it was born today, or I forget how exactly he phrases it in the song, but to your point, and kind of putting it in your context, I kind of get it. I mean, this song is clearly about missing someone and being away from someone, but I just like how they laid it out, how it was just like, all of a sudden there's this distance between these two people, and it's this, he uses the very, very gigantic Atlantic Ocean as the symbol of that distance, but really drives the point home. So I thought that was well done.
Nice. I hadn't even yeah, I agree with you. I hadn't even really thought about that line that the Atlantic Ocean was born today, that, like, all of a sudden there is this really large, vast thing between these two people. I'd never pieced that together, so that's really cool. I like that a lot.
All right, track two, I think same album, it is Passenger Seat.
Yeah, exact same album. I believe this may have been featured on a previous mix of ours when we were talking about love songs, because this, in my mind, is just top of mind. What's your favorite love song? I put this song always, Passenger Seat. I think it tells a really beautiful, simple story. I think love sometimes is like, people think of these grand moments and these big, like, achievements or whatever it might be. Like, they think of the big stuff in people's lives. But I think love often is all the small things in between that fill, fill the time between those grand moments and those milestones. And so this kind of is that. It paints this picture of him being in the passenger seat of a car with someone that he loves driving. And, they're having this cute little conversation, like, about how whether satellites and shooting stars collide. And I laugh, she smiles. Like, it's just this cute little moment that they're sharing together as they're driving out, out in the country. Um, and I just think it's a beautiful love song in that regard, and it's always made me smile, and kind of same deal. I would play this song as well, often with, driving in the back country roads of Austin and the hill country there, where just kind of escaped the city and escaped everything that I was, quote unquote, dealing with, even though in retrospect I feel like I had a lot that was totally great in my life. But like, it's okay. I was
In
young.
retrospect,
Yeah.
yeah, things are never as bad as you think, or maybe never as good as you thought. Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. But at the time, yeah, it was exactly what I needed to hear, and I loved it in that regard.
I like how this one used the word cute a couple times, and I use that in my description too. It's just like this sort of cute little description of like a road trip, this couple on a road trip, and just this sort of moment. And I kind of like how they kind of go into detail just about this one moment. And I think that was kind of a through line I found listening to Death Cab for Cutie is probably more than I ever have in my life, with this mix. And they do a really good job of emphasizing kind of moments in life and just like being present in those moments and how important that can be. And that's what kind of stood out to me probably the second time through when I listened to this. Like I listened to the mix a couple times before every, while I'm prepping for the show. And I think the second time through, that's what really stuck out. It's like that's kind of and them better than I do, but to me, at least with the sample you provided, it's very much a being present is something they kind of highlight, whether intentionally or not. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think that's a huge running theme, being present, and then also, as a result, like, being aware of how impermanent everything is, and how open to change life is. So I think those two things go hand in hand and are definitely a theme.
All right, track three, we've got What Sarah Said.
Yeah, so new album. This is off Plans from 2005. To your point earlier about maybe this is not a song you play like when you are out doing something or being with people. The first time I heard this album, funny enough, was in a college dorm room with my best friend. I'd driven in to visit him, and it was a group of us sitting around. We're like, "Oh my god, Death Cab for Cutie just released a new album. Let's play it," because we all loved them. And we played it, and then by the end of it, I'm amazed we went through the whole thing together. Right by the end of it, we were like, "Hey, maybe let's put something else on." you know it really pulled us down. I think, at that point we probably went to like a
Yeah.
power hour mix
You
or
guys,
something,
you guys
right?
want to get some pizza or just maybe sleep for a few days?
Right. You want to write some
Just
letters to loved ones lost, or some scrapbooking with tears in our eyes. Just throwing some ideas out there. um, because this is a very sad song. And what's so crazy is that I've listened to this song thousands of times. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Love the piano. The piano is also like a star of the show for Death Cab for Cutie. Like, it makes a lot of appearances through his songs. But I always heard this one as kind of like a rough song where she's asking like, who's going to watch you die, and I had interpreted it as like, who loves you, like no one loves you, like who's going to watch you die, you're going to be all alone. And then it wasn't until this time really reading through it and listening to the lyrics one more time that I realized it is still a sad song because she's in the hospital, she's dying, but she wants to make sure that when she leaves that he is not going to be
mm,
alone, that in fact like he needs to move on and find someone, because she wants someone to watch him die, so to speak, right? Like someone, because she said true love is watching someone die. And so I like completely did a 180 on this song. I was like, this is amazing. I think it really is just trying to speak to the fact that like it's a gift to have people who love you and who love you so much that they'll love you till your last moment. And so I thought that was, it's just amazing. We've talked a lot about the show now that we're 3 years into it, of how we can, we can listen to a song a million times, and that millionth and one, as prepping for the show, we're like, oh wow, we have this kind of a realization about it. So I love that, and that was part of why I wanted to put this on the mix.
yeah, this is a really powerful song. That like I hadn't even thought about that interpretation, like you laid it out, where it's like she's kind of, echoing that back to him a little bit. Love is watching someone die. I think that line just stood out to me just because of my own life experiences. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, and like I was there in the hospital, the day he passed away, and then, same thing with one of my best friends a year ago, and so having had those experiences, like this one was very evocative for me, just personally. And so I think anyone out there who's maybe gone through that before, like this one's going to hit you just because the way he sets the scene. And again, I think his songwriting does a really good job of providing like really good detail of these small scenes, right? Because this is not like a major scene necessarily, but it's just he goes into so much detail here that it's just like even the scent of 409 or whatever, he mentions that in the lyrics, right? And yeah, I don't know, this one really hit me, but I hadn't even thought about the kind of echo part, because I think I was just caught up kind of in my own experiences, and hearing that line, love is watching someone die.
Yeah, I think it is such a powerful track in that regard, and can definitely like kind of throw you in. And you're right, like I think that little details are what make it so haunting, because just similar to the previous song, it's not about some big thing. It's just sitting in a hospital waiting room smelling the cleaning agent that they use. So that really, yeah, I think we can all connect with smells just as powerfully as we connect with songs. So it is something.
All right, track 4. It is Brothers on a Hotel Bed.
Yeah, so, on the theme of love, which definitely is something that he writes a lot about, this is a different take. Like, this is kind of this imagery of two people who grow apart over time to the point where they're sleeping as if they're brothers on a hotel bed. Like, the imagery here is like you imagine like two brothers or two friends or, whoever, where like typically, at least in my experience growing up, whenever I had to share a room with my friend, it's like you take the corners of the bed and you face away from
Right.
each other. Like you are as far apart from one another, as you want, or as you can be. And so it's like, I think that is like what he's painting that picture of just, a couple who kind of grows apart and eventually they don't even sleep next to each other. So they sleep like brothers in a hotel bed, which, yeah, it's just like so heartbreaking. And again, it's like that writing, that metaphor, that example that, we can all kind of relate to. But I think, again, the piano is just absolutely gorgeous. It's the kind of, you know, like, I love the aged sounding intro to this song. Like, I think it immediately just sets a scene sonically. And then it's just this like another heartbreaking story, but in a different way, because this is just about two people who have fallen out of love, presumably.
When I read the title, I was like, because I had a brother, or I have a brother, and I was like, maybe this will be about reminiscing. This will be about good times, As I'm listening to it, I'm like, it is not. These people are not having a good time. Nope.
No. You are welcome.
That being said, this is a really well done analogy of like growing apart to where this is your relationship now, right? Like this is how you sleep. This is how distanced you are. Kind of and he uses the physical representation of it, right, to kind of highlight the emotional representation, right, and the emotional distance. So again, I again, as I dove more into the lyrics, I think I appreciated this so much more. Again, it's not a pick me up song at all, but I do think it's really well done.
Yep. Glad you liked it.
All right, track 5. It is Grapevine Fires.
All right, so moving on to Narrow Stairs, which is their 6th album. This is in 2008. This one is, now we are on the theme of kind of impermanence, and that things are all like finite. And so it's interesting. I think like a lot of the earlier stuff, as I go through this timeline, it's like a lot of it was about love and things of that nature. And then now, as we get into the back half of this mix, it's going to be a lot about how everything is changing and things are not permanent at all. And so this is kind of that first delve into that. In this one, it's like all about how things are, it's like a fire sweeping through a place and how it can destroy it all. And I think this fire can both be real, but can also be metaphorical about how change sometimes comes and just like a fire, like resets everything. I think, again, like the writing is just so gorgeous. The one, kind of verse I want to call out is where he sings, "And the northern sky looked like the end of days, the end of days. The wake-up call to a rented room sounded like an alarm of impending doom to warn us it's only a matter of time." And I love that. The wake-up call to a rented room sound like an alarm of impending doom, because like if you've ever stayed in a hotel and gotten one of those calls, those phones are like just frightening in their volume and their shrillness, right? Like
Yeah,
it's never
the hotel phone ring has never really been corrected. Like,
no,
I don't care how nice the hotel you're staying in. Like, that phone rings
right.
and something bad is about to happen. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like I now want to open up a chain of super awesome hotels where like our one thing is like the phone is going to make you feel happy. Like the alarms are nice.
Yeah. Hey, there's some good news coming, right? Yeah.
Right.
No, there is impending doom whenever a hotel phone rings. There's no doubt.
All right. Yeah, it's incredible. But yes, and I also love the outro here, where it's like just so subtle, like this little line that he slips on right at the end, where he sings, "The firemen worked in double shifts with prayers for rain on their lips, and they knew it was only a matter of time." And I just think that's so like powerful and sad in that moment. Where, like even despite them being out there, they knew it was just a matter of time. So just a very, very powerful song in that regard.
Yeah, the end part there stuck out for me as well, because it's like, how do you tell me a story in 3 lines? And I think that's exactly what he does. And I'm like, wow, that's really good.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this song, I mean, was almost hopeful, and maybe I was just searching for something. But the way I kind of looked at it, where it's like there is this fire, but then he kind of sets this scene where they're sort of, he's sort of enjoying this moment away from it, right? And just I don't know. I kind of took that as kind of a, with every crazy thing going on around us. If you just kind of dive headfirst, whether it's into the news or whatever reality you want to live in, it's like it could feel like you're in the middle of a fire all the time, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I love how just kind of has this sort of, hey, I listened to it and I heard it as like, you know, take a moment and see what's around you, because you probably have a really nice family that you could spend some time with and not worry about whatever awful thing is on the news right now.
Yeah. I love that interpretation. That's really cool. I like that.
All right, track 6, we go to Pity and Fear.
Yeah, so off the same album still. And this one is really just a song about choices that you make and like that you unfortunately like may end up regretting and being fearful of, and kind of bring on a lot of the self-loathing and stuff. In this case, it's about, being unfaithful or being with people continuously and not getting into a relationship, like you're just kind of hopping between seeing people. But I just think it's, I love how beautifully it's written, of course, like we keep talking about that. But musically on this one, I listen to this one again and again because I just love how it gets more frantic as the song continues. And it just kind of speaks to that emotion of how all of these thoughts and feelings, like as you have pity, self pity, and you have fear, and you've got all these like self judgment stuff, that it can become very overwhelming and just like build up and build up. And then the best part is that it just kind of cuts out at the end. Like you think that maybe like the track skipped or something, because there's no outro at all. Like it's just noise and then nothing. And I think that's also really powerful and just speaks to like the kind of jaggedness of these feelings, and how sudden they can come on and how maybe sudden they can leave too.
I thought something was wrong with my AirPods when I like the end came to this one. Like I thought they'd
Right.
run out of power or something. So yeah, that
Yeah.
that that immediately stood out to me while I was listening to this one. The electric guitar is like just so much stronger in this one, and you're right. They do a lot more musically here to evoke that emotion and the, like you said, the frantic nature of it all. But that's what stood out to me here more so than probably the lyrics. I think on this one was, I thought it was such a
Yeah.
departure from their normal sound, and you could probably speak to that better. But for me, listening to it up to this point and kind of what I knew about them, I was almost surprised to hear a song like this, and then certainly surprised by the ending and the sort of sudden cutoff that they had there.
Yeah, it's like they began to experiment with that like outro buildup, which I think is another reason why I fell in love with them. Because if you've been a long time listener of the show, you know that that's like the type of song I love, where it just kind of like swells to a crescendo and then either cuts out or just ends. And so there's definitely a lot of that, and I think there's a number of songs coming up even on this mix where he's doing the same thing with them as well. So yeah.
All right, track 7. It is Home is a Fire.
All right, so new album, Codes and Keys, 2011 now. Just another kind of classic Death Cab for Cutie song here. This one is also kind of fire based, if you will, which is interesting. That also became kind of a theme through these years in their career. This one again is about how kind of change is inevitable and nothing stays the same. And like I love the line where he sings like, the bricks made me nervous. They're only so strong, love. They're only so strong, love. That, even with the bricks of their home, like they can't withstand everything. And that, yeah, things that seemingly are strong and structurally sound eventually can go away and can be, taken over by time or events and things of that nature. So, the other thing here too is, again, I love the franticness of the song and the high energy that it has. Um, and I believe it's the opening song off of this album, which it kind of sets the stage for the rest of it. So absolutely love this song and come back to it over and over again as well.
Yeah, this is clearly an unstable home situation, right? Whether again he uses the physical as a representation of like the emotional, right? Like that's kind of
Yeah.
how he lays out, I think, a lot of his songs. Definitely on this one and the next one too. He does a good job of that. But here, I also like how there's a lot of, like you said, there's just the frantic nature of the music, and the musical changes here really add to the lyrics. So not only is the lyrics describing an unstable situation, but the music behind it is not necessarily staying stable as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an excellent call out.
So in a similar vein, I think this next song I think also works like that. It is St. Peter's Cathedral.
Yeah, exactly. Another one that does that a lot and bring like has the music kind of add to the lyrics because the opening line has these like distorted church bells almost. And this is, truly kind of like a take on religion and whether or not um, religious teachings are correct or not. Like it's kind of questioning a lot of these things. And, the line that gets repeated a bunch that I really love is there's nothing past this, where he's really challenging the notion of like a lot of religions that believe that there's like an afterlife and a place to go. And here he's just singing, there's nothing past this. So I love this song because I think it kind of speaks to a lot of the natural fears that everyone has of like, what is past this? And do I believe, in whatever religious or spirituality beliefs I have, or do I believe that there's nothing past it? And can be very common, I think, even in one person's life to kind of swing between the different sides of that, where you question and then you believe and then you question again. And so I think it's just really, an interesting song in that regard. But I love again, the distorted bells that open it up is what draws me to the song over and over again because I think that was very much on purpose.
I love how the detail that he gets into just describing St. Peter's Cathedral, right? Like you could almost like, I'm
Mhm.
sure I'd love to hear like a tour guide from there kind of listen to this and be like, yeah, he's spot on. Yeah, that's exactly how it looks.
Right. I would love for him to narrate all the tours of buildings that I go to. That sounds great.
But you're right. He doesn't seem like a big fan of religion, right? I tried to
Mhm.
look at this kind of maybe hopefully a little bit and just sort of a call out again when I listened to it a second time and kind of thinking about living in the present moment. I felt like this song was kind of a call to that as well, where it's like, yes, he describes this St. Peter's Cathedral and he does a really good job describing it. And there is that there's nothing past this sort of thing. But I don't know, it's almost a reminder of, you know, instead of just thinking about the next thing, just think about where you are, right? And
Mhm.
using religion as a metaphor, I mean, is pretty powerful in the sense that if all you're doing is playing for the afterlife, it's like, well, you're going to kind of miss out on this life, you know. So I get that, and but yeah, it's again another really well done song. But again, I love how he brings together kind of these physical descriptions to drive home an emotional point.
Yeah, exactly. Another theme of just being very present in your life.
All right, track 9. It is the Ghosts of Beverly Drive.
All right, yeah. So just one song off of this album. This is Kintsugi from 2015. This one is an album that I don't know. I didn't spend too much time with it. It didn't resonate with me in the same way that many of his other albums did. But I absolutely love this song, and so I wanted to include it here. And this one, kind of speaks to the idea of like going back to a space where you may have had like a bad relationship or a bad experience. And so the ghost of Beverly Drive is like you're being haunted by ghosts of this like physical place that you can go to. And I love the chorus where, I'll just read the lines here. I don't know why I return to the scenes of these crimes, where the hedgerows slowly wind through the ghost of Beverly Drive. I don't know why, I don't know why, I don't know what I expect to find, where all the news is secondhand and everything just goes on as planned. Again, it's like this really rich imagery of painting a picture of coming back to this place where things are kind of just moving on without you, and the news is secondhand. It's like you only know what's going on through like secondhand, like through people telling you, or through gossip, or like you heard it through a friend who heard it through a friend. Whereas like you used to be connected to this place and you were in it, but now you're returning and like it's a ghost. It's like an echo of once what was in the past. And so I think that's a very powerful imagery here, and we can all kind of relate to moments in our life where we go back to a place that used to be super important to us, and now all it is a shadow of what it once was.
Yeah, like we said earlier, right? Looking back, it's never as maybe good as you thought it was or bad as you thought it was, right? Similar thing here. The line that stood out to me, you talk about imagery. I think it's maybe the second verse. He says, "But if you let me be your skyline, I'll let you be the wave that reduces me to rubble, but looked safe from far away." was like, "Whoo,
Yeah,
yeah,
amazing.
that's." I think a lot of people can relate to being in a relationship that at first like seemed like a really good idea. And then,
Yes. You're like, "Oh, that little thing over there? That's
yeah.
fine."
Oh, look at that. That's going to be helpful. Nope. No, it won't. No, it won't. It's going to take you down. It's going to take you down. But also look, I also like the kind of up tempo nature of this song. Like just rhythmically, I think they pick it up a little bit here, which shows some range. I think these last few songs that you put on here, I think showed just what they can do musically. You did a good job here on all 12 songs, showing the different ways they kind of switch things up. All right, track 10. It is Gold Rush.
Yeah, so this is now off of their ninth studio album, Thank You for Today. So we're all the way up in 2018. I believe this is a song we've spoken about before because this is, now on the topic again of impermanence and kind of watching things change. He's speaking about his hometown of Seattle and the state of Washington just changing so much, like with the growth that it had and kind of the birth of all these like major corporations and sound and everything that came out of Seattle, like the grunge scene and all of that, it invited a lot of people there. And so naturally, as a result, there are a lot of change. And again, with a really rich imagery of watching that change, like, they keep digging it down and down so that their cars can live underground, like just speaking about building parking garages basically and knocking things out so their cars can live underground. I love that. And the swinging of a wrecking ball through these lath and plaster walls is letting all the shadows free, the ones I wish still followed me. And what an amazing line, just thinking about how like the wrecking ball is knocking these places that he used to go that had history and had meaning in his life. And now, the wrecking ball is letting them free. And they're no longer going to be following him because like the places are gone. So I just think it's a very powerful song that we can relate to as all of our lives change and the places we grew up change. And again, things do not stay the same. That's probably the lesson of a lot of these songs. And he sings very well about them and paints such really rich pictures about how that happens.
Yeah, this is a great. I mean, I live in Dallas. Like this happens everywhere. It seems like in Dallas, it's
Right.
like they're
Yes.
constantly taking these, big open areas and then just bringing in every franchise restaurant possible to that area, as well as like
Right.
subdivisions and all this. So, yeah, I can definitely relate to it as far as watching that happen to a city, but yeah, the phrase placed faith in geography like kind of stood out to me. I was like, that's really well done because it's true. I think sometimes people get beholden to these things that it's like, yeah, all right, well, that's still your town, but yeah, eventually like buildings get replaced or buildings fall down or whatever the case may be, right? And so it's never going to be the same as it was. And in this case, he highlights maybe a little bit more of the blatant capitalism around it, maybe. But
Hmm.
you could certainly take
Right.
it as just kind of the evolution of things, and like you said, the impermanence of it all. So, yeah, really good song. All right, track 11, home stretch here. I dreamt we spoke again.
Yeah, this one I have to open it up with how Ben himself described the song, and he said it's a death cabism upbeat song with sad lyrics. It's the only thing we're famous for. Yeah, I love that upbeat song with sad lyrics. So this absolutely is that, because when you first play it, if you don't listen to the lyrics, you're like, yeah, I like this song. It does sound kind of upbeat. It's got a good rhythm to it. Like you can kind of like head nod to it, and then you pay attention to the song and you realize, he's kind of like this idea of speaking with like a ghost. Like it could be a metaphorical ghost, could be a past relationship, could be actually someone you lost. Through death. And so like it's an interesting kind of take on that, because he sings here, the opening line, it's been so long, my mind filled in the blanks. And I just love that imagery again, where as time goes by from the thing that you lost or the person that you lost, you do start to lose details. And so your mind does fill in the blanks. It's kind of similar to the experience of waking up from a dream. Like you tend to kind of really remember the dream seconds after you wake up, but then as the day goes by, you forget a lot of it. And then maybe by the end of the day, like you don't remember much and you just kind of fill in what you thought might have happened. And I think that that is like unfortunate experience that we have when we lose people. Like we remember them so vividly in the beginning, but then as the years go by and the decades go by, we kind of fill in the blanks, and we, only have like an idea of who they were. So I think in that regard, it is a very tragic song. But it is, again, sung in such an upbeat, lovely way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this one probably resonated with me the most out of all the songs on this track. And last weekend I was just with some friends of mine, kind of remembering a friend we had lost, and that fill in the blanks thing. I mean, it's exactly right. We're all just sitting there trying to piece together these stories, and then we're kind of laughing, like trying to remember this, but each one of us kind of remembered a different part. And it was like, no, 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 remember it was this, and then it was that. And but that's exactly what happens. Like those stories that maybe are so vivid in your mind while someone's alive, once they pass, and when you're not talking to them all the time, it's kind of like you have those stories that you will recall with that friend, right? But when that person's gone and then you're the only one, you're the keeper of that memory. It's like to recall those stories, sometimes it's really it gets hard. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, but this one kind of really stuck with me just on the title alone. I dreamt we spoke again, because I think I could definitely relate to that. And but yeah, the filling in the blanks, I definitely just had that experience. So yeah, really well
Hmm.
written song. All right, let's bring it home. It is Here to Forever.
So yes, off of their most recent album from 2022, Asphalt Meadows, which brings it to 10 studio albums for the band altogether. This is a really good one to kind of end on, because it's titled Here to Forever, but it's talking again, it kind of wraps up a huge theme that we keep mentioning, which is about impermanence and how everything kind of goes away. And I think as he's gotten older, 19 years has gone by since the 2003, 20 years has gone by since they kind of launched the band entirely. Um, I'm sure that he's thinking a lot about this stuff because, in this opening line, he sings, "In every movie I watched from the 50s, there's only one thought that swirls around my head now. And that's that everyone there on the screen, yeah, everyone there on the screen, well, they're all dead now." Um, and like, what a thought, right? And I think that as we get older, we we tend to start to kind of think about that, right? Like, we're like, wow. I mean, I've certainly thought about that in the context of even in my own life, like the people who are really famous and like quote unquote important when I was young, you're like, wait, what are they doing now? Like you've kind of like you move on to the next group of people. And so I think like it's interesting that no matter how large you are and how famous you become or how impactful you are, like eventually like you die and like civilization just keeps marching forward. And that can be kind of a scary thought. um if you let it be, like I think it can be very arresting, or ideally you can find it freeing and you can like not really try to grasp on things that it's like sand through your fingers, like is you're never going to hold on to it. So maybe, for me, that's always like what I'm more focused on, is like letting that be a freeing thought and rather than arresting one. And Death Cab for Cutie certainly spends a lot of time in this space singing about it and making you think about it.
I think my new standard for stress is going to be whether or not I need someone to hold a gun to my back to get me to relax. That's that's what I took from this song.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, I'm not that stressed. I think I'll be okay.
Incredible line. Yeah.
But this is definitely one that you said at the top, like, hey, are you okay after listening to this? And this is definitely a song, kind of is everyone okay? Like, I think I'd be watching that movie with them and be like, Ben, what do you think of the cinematography? Let's just focus on that. Okay.
Right.
You want a refill on that soda? Come on, let's pick it up here. But you're right. He's right. Like, like I joke, but I do like the way he writes songs and the impermanence of it. And he just does a really good job of describing it all. And you're right. It's sort of our perspective that will dictate how we react to this, right? You can kind of react it as sort of I started to take it as kind of a seize the day type thing from it. Is he's right. This is
Right.
impermanent. So you should really relish these moments when you have them with your family and your friends or whomever. because it's all going to go away at some point, inevitably. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of took it as that, but yeah, I can also see how people may listen to their music and like the experience you had with your friends, where it's like we were really down at the end of this, you know.
Yes.
And so I choose to kind of go the more hopeful route and the more positive route. So yeah, overall, I mean, I really, like I told you, this is the most I've listened to Death Cab for Cutie, and I really grew to appreciate, especially, I mean, the songwriting like just stood out for me just over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they are masters of storytelling. As you mentioned, like the tell me a story in 3 lines, like I think you could pull out a lot of verses through any of these tracks and there'd be a story in just 3 lines. And I think that that's what makes their music so powerful and have this staying power through all these years.
Well, there you have it. It's an intro to Death Cab for Cutie by our own Sammer. So, Sammer, thanks for putting that mix together for everyone. We've got plenty of mixes to put together in the future. You can follow it all on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. But in the meantime, for Sammer, this is Matt, and we'll see you next time. Super Awesome Mix is brought to you by DLM. Make shopping easy with DLM, the one-stop shop for all your casual clothing needs. Shop DLMsupplyco.com and enter the promo code AWESOME at checkout to save 15% off your first purchase. That's DLMsupplyco.com.